going back to what I was saying, can you hear me? Every time we experience the world of object in either states, the state of dream and the state of awakening, every time we experience the object, okay, the thought of object, we experience the perception through the eyes and so on that constitute the experience of the thought and the object. And what is there still to make this experience possible? Consciousness. The mind is there. The mind is the equipment, right? The mind is there. The sense organs is part of the mind. The mind has to be hooked with the physical body to be an experiencing entity. We are experiencing the world through the body-mind. And then we have the mind, which is going to integrate the stimulus from the object, the perception of the object, is going to bring it into one single experience, and then the intellect is going to determine what is this. You understand? So we experience all of that through this agent called the experiencing entity. So we experience the object and we experience the jiva, the agent. But there is something as well that is there together with all of that, making that experience possible. And that is you, consciousness. We are all the time experience consciousness, but not as an object, but as our very nature. You understand, David? And now you?
I'm just struck that it's like we can have a projector, but if the light bulb is burnt out, then nothing's happening. You need the light. You need the...
Yeah. You got it? And
you can have a screen, you can have a projector, but you have to have light.
Yeah, and you have electrical power in that case.
Yeah. And an internet connection.
And the internet connection. Yeah. Okay. Good. I was concerned because I saw in your face that you were struggling. So, and then I was happy when I saw you smiling.
No, I just whenever we're talking like this, I always have to go back to the fundamentals to me, and that's to remember what's real and what's not real. So what's the definition? Satchitananda. And then I was writing down again the 4Ds, and I keep going back to the 4Ds, and how do I do what you're talking about? And to me, I have to go back to the 4Ds and of discernment, detachment, devotion, and discipline.
Right. Okay. So let's go into the fun. The fun is the benefits of self-knowledge. The verse 83. So the thought, meaning to say knowledge, the thought, meaning to say knowledge, which indicates the identity between the individual and the total, is free of duality. He is consciousness alone. When this knowledge is firm, the one who has this knowledge is called the Jivan Mukta, the liberated while living. So here it says the thought is nothing other than knowledge. Okay, when we experience something, immediately the intellect determines what it is about that object of experience, and that is what we call knowledge. Okay, every time that the mind gets in contact with an object of experience, it brings about the knowledge of that object. So we are not going into another discussion, which is whether the apprehension of that object through the perception, if it is true to the object or not. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. Sometimes we project, sometimes the mind is too tamasic, and then it conceals, okay, the perception of the object, the same way sometimes we don't perceive a cord, a rope as a rope. So, but leaving that discussion aside, every thought brings about every contact, brings about a thought, and that thought is knowledge, okay? Is the knowledge in respect to the object that the mind got, that appears in the screen of the mind, okay? And which indicates the identity. This thought that we are talking about here, which is the knowledge, which indicates the identity between individual and the total, is free of duality. So what is the difference between the knowledge that we experience in every moment of our lives? Like this came to me and then I say, okay, the thought, the cup thought came into my mind, and this is knowledge, the knowledge of the cup. The knowledge of the cup is truthful to the cup, okay? So I did not see anything other than the thought, the cup, so it's faithful to the cup. So this is a way to see knowledge, thought and knowledge, dualistically speaking. What is duality? Is the objective knowledge. Knowledge in respect to objects that appear within this duality, the knower and the object of knowledge. Okay, this is objective knowledge. This is the scientific knowledge. But here in this verse, it says, the thought, aham brahmasmi or tat vamasi, okay? The thought that the individual and the total are the same. The thought and the knowledge, which indicates the identity between the Jiva-Atma and Paramatma. This is again a thought, and it's a knowledge. It's a thought, it is a knowledge, and it's indicating the identity between Jiva-Atma, which is the experience no entity, and Paramatma. And then what is the difference here? Paramatma is not an object of knowledge, right? So here it's saying that this thought, which is knowledge, is altogether of a totally different nature because it's a non-dual thought. This thought, which indicates the identity between the Jiva-Atma and Paramatma, is not a dualistic thought. Like all other thoughts are in relation to the object, the known object that appears to the knower, the jiva. But this thought, tat vamasi, which establishes the identity between the individual and Brahman, okay, is not dualistic because Brahman is not an object of knowledge. Brahman is the very nature of the Jiva-Atma. Therefore, the verse says, the thought, this knowledge which indicates the identity between Jiva-Atma and Paramatma, is free of duality. And this thought, not being a dualistic thought, is consciousness and consciousness alone. Because it's the only thought that refers to the non-dual nature of reality, of the self. Do I have any more of you here in the videos, or everybody's out of the video because the internet connection is poor today?
I'm here.
I'm here too. Do you want us to turn back on? It must be.
Yeah,
More
please
boring.
stop, because I keep only seeing, I see only David, and then I like to see David. He's a very good looking guy, but you know, and then when I see his mind a little bit like that, you know, and then I say I need to see some other minds, you know, minds that are a little bit more, you know, so that I can get different feedbacks as well. So going back, this thought is a non-dual thought. This thought that, which is knowledge, which indicates the identity between Jiva-Atma and Paramatma, being a knowledge, being a thought which is by nature is non-dual, it means that it is consciousness and consciousness alone, okay? Because consciousness is of the nature of one without a second, and only consciousness could establish the knowledge that, you know, you, Jiva-Atma, the experience entity that experiences duality, is but consciousness, and not only that, everything resolves into consciousness. So this is consciousness. That's what Shankara says here. So this thought, which indicates the identity between Jivatma and Paramatma, is free of duality, and therefore is consciousness and consciousness alone. When this knowledge, this non-dual knowledge, is clear and firm, the one who has this knowledge is consciousness alone. That's the point when we say that self-knowledge is to understand that I'm not the jiva, but I'm consciousness. That's the only reality. Self-knowledge is understanding that, oh, I'm not the wave, I am the ocean after all. You understand? Appearing as a wave. So when we have this knowledge, and this knowledge is clear and firm, the one who has this knowledge is said to be liberated while living. So we can go as deep as we want into this notion of liberated, and the meaning of this word liberate or moksha, as we have many times engaged the discussion. So let's see what Dayananda presents here or add. Every thought is a confusion of the unreal with the real. This confusion is called adhyasa, or superimposition. We recollect something that we perceive and we impose it on something else. In the case of the snake and the rope, we once either saw or obtained knowledge of a snake, and we then impose that knowledge on the rope. So it's saying here that most of the thoughts that we have as a jiva, it has certain extent, a certain degree of projection. This is the pratibhasika aspect of the jiva that can never really see things totally as it is, because the vasanas are going to give some colors to it, you know? So exactly like when we see the snake on the rope. So this is called superimposition, okay, adhyasa. Most knowledge is like that, dualistic knowledge. The jiva, the poor jiva, with a lot of rajas and tamas as well, condition its mind, its intellect, is going to perceive reality with a little bit of projection and concealings, you know. We recollect in general something that we perceived before, and we impose it on something that appears to us. We do it all the time. When something new comes, we have to interpret, and we interpret according to previous perceptions and determinations that we take it to be more or less on the lines of what is showing up here now, and then I'm going to interpret and determine things from my vasana load. So that's what it says here. So we impose our vasanas on what is being presented to us. In the case of the snake and the rope, we once either saw or obtained knowledge of the snake. So wow, I went into the woods. I went into the woods today, by the way, and I walked for quite some time. And then I did not see a snake. But I saw a snake long ago in India. So now I know what a snake is. You understand? And then the snake is there in my memory system. And I know that snake is something a little scary because they contain poison. They can kill someone, you know, if you step on a snake. So, and then what I have read of vasana, fear-oriented vasana towards snake. And then I go somewhere and it's a little bit dark, and then there is something, you know, resembling a snake. Immediately I project my snake, my fear snake, on the whatsoever appears there, which is not a snake. Okay, so it's from whatsoever I have read in my memory system. That in that case, the rope is real, the snake is adhyasa. Adhyasa, Vedanta is a means of knowledge primarily concerned with clearing up this confusion through the knowledge of what is real, the self. So this is in the case of the non-dual knowledge in respect to the nature of the self or true nature. So that's what Vedanta serves the primary purpose of clearing this confusion through the knowledge of what's real, the self, and what is a superimposition of names, of vasanas, past impressions. No? Vedanta is not concerned with examining the nature of the snake. A lot of the people in the spiritual world, they get lost trying to examine the nature of this appearing snake. Vedanta cuts to the chase. They say, don't get lost with Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagata. Okay? You need to understand those three principles. You need to understand, in which way the life of the Jiva is conditioned by Ishvara, because Ishvara, is the one considering to moment our prarabdha karmas, and Ishvara is the one designed the laws by which, every Jiva experience this world, this properly ordered, intelligent, well-organized Dharma field. So we need to understand the laws that govern this structure. So we need to understand the Ishvara from different angles, but we don't want to be lost. So religious people, like Dave was saying before, they are fascinated with Ishvara. I have someone here that was studying with me since a year and a half, more or less. And he was all the time a little struggling because he comes from the background of yoga and devotion, but devotion and Krishna and this and that and kirtans and pujas and bhajans and so on. So he likes to have this dualistic, relationship with Saguna Ishvara, Saguna Brahman. And he gets a lot from it, and he feels that his mind gets more and more lit up and pure in that within that relationship with Saguna Ishvara. And I was all the time telling him, that's good, do both, do your dualistic kind of contemplations and pujas and, and at the same time, once you see that your mind is more clear, just go into the non-duality as presented by the Upanishads, And he was like, for a year, try to stay in the bus with us on boat. But recently he met another group of people that are totally for Krishna, And there is a lot of energy, a lot of Shakti, and in the groups that they meet together with all the pujas and everything. And the guy is so excited. He's, and he forgot Vedanta altogether. And he called me the other day to explain me that he was leaving. He was thank me for everything, and he was leaving the group. And he was a good supporter of mine, never since. And he say, I go there because, that's my thing. And to me, Saguna Ishvara is real, and I can't live without Saguna Ishvara, okay? So Vedanta is not concerned about Ishvara. It does not tell anybody that Ishvara, the Saguna Ishvara, Saguna Brahman is an end by itself. It's just a means to an end. Saguna Ishvara serves only the purpose to purify our mind, to refine our mind so that we can begin contemplating on our nature as Nirguna Ishvara, Nirguna Brahman, okay? Consciousness, existence, the substratum of Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat. So Vedanta says, the Vedanta does not get entangled with Jiva, Ishvara, and Jagata. But Vedanta does not exclude Jiva, Ishvara, and Jagata and say, no, don't go there, they don't exist. No, they exist. But our final goal is to understand the true nature of Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagata. Vedanta is a means of knowledge primarily concerned with clearing up this confusion between what's real and is not real. Vedanta is not really concerned with examining the nature of Ishvara, the nature of Jiva, the nature of the rope in that case, understand? And the nature of the snake. Why? Because the snake is just an appearance. The snake is only a superimposition. And how about the Jiva? It's also another superimposition on consciousness. And how about the world, the universe? It's another superimposition in awareness. And what about Ishvara, Saguna Brahman? And then when you tell that to these dualists, you know, to these bhaktas, these dualists, that they are so crazy for Saguna Ishvara, when you tell them that Saguna Ishvara as well is a superimposition, it's not real, and that is when things get a little difficult for them to accept, you know. Therefore, they don't like very much these notions that Ishvara is not really real. It's not concerned with examining the nature of huh?
I had a question, Karen, if I may. Isn't that the same as the duality of Jesus and God? Kind of. I mean, of course, Jesus is the Son of God, but we are like the children of Ishwara or Brahman, really.
Yeah.
Isn't that the same?
Yeah. So the idea of Jesus, you know, Jesus within our culture is an avatar. Okay, it's a soul that came into incarnation. It came into this plane of physicality, not on account of its own karma. It's someone who came to lift up, you know, and uphold and lift up, you know, the consciousness of people, you know, bring more justice, bring more knowledge, bring more light, you know. So these avatars, they serve this purpose. So Buddha, Christ, Krishna, Ram, and a few others, they are considered to be the avatars. But what the church, the Christianity and this church made out of Jesus, they just say that Jesus is the only Son of God, which is a little bit strange, you know, because we know that we are all sons and daughters of God, right? Because we come from the same source. It's God, consciousness, Brahman, the ultimate God. Yeah? And then we have Maya, which brings about Brahman personified as our God, you know. And then this God has all these children. It has the ignorant, it has the samsaris, it has the jivas, the jivanmuktas, the yanis, and it has the avatars, which are yanis that came here, you know, just to give us a hand. So, but Christianity somehow says that Jesus is the only begotten Son of God, which made what of all of us? That is the funny thing about, you know, if we are not children of God, we don't know what we are. Maybe we are all ETs, right? You understand? So the idea in Christianity is that there is a God, and furthermore, this God, as presented by this Christian religion, that I'm not an expert, but from what I know, it is presented and painted as a God which is motivated by, you know, by either rewarding people who are good or punishing people who are bad, which is not far from the truth presented by the Vedas, in the sense that, you know, this God is going to give back to us the results of our actions. So if we do good, we're going to enjoy good lokas when we leave this realm and so on. But the whole elaboration of the teachings in the Christianity is very infantile, you know. It serves not to really give all this. Now, maybe they have the knowledge there in the Vatican, but they don't share with the masses, you know. I don't know. But from what I hear in the church when I was a child, it's a little bit rudimentary, you know. It's like, oh no, you have to follow certain rules here or you're going to burn in hell. Otherwise, but if you You can go and enjoy yourself eternally in heaven if you behave. And that is not enough to help people to live a righteous, dharmic life, because people, they don't have the logic that can help them to understand why to live a dharmic, righteous life. They see, okay, I'm not gonna do those things as long as nobody can catch me. But if nobody will see, I will do certain things, because the guy did not understand. The priest did not give him the teaching about karma and the results of actions that occur internally in our minds every time we violate this common sense, this common moral laws and so on. Vedanta is not concerned with examining the nature of the snake. Once the knowledge of what is real is born, so to speak, the confusion ends. When we perceive ourselves as the body-mind, all that's not included in that body-mind becomes the world. We as individuals are defined in relation to that totality, the universe. The totality of all objects is what is outside of the body. So when we identify with the body, immediately there is duality, and then there is the I, the jiva, body-mind, and the totality of all body-minds and all inert objects. The saying, you are the totality. The saying, you are the totality, you are that totality, you are that Brahman, rejects this definition, the definition I and the totality, I and the universe, I and all other objects. So the saying, you are the totality, rejects this dualistic definition by asserting that the individual and the total are the same thing. Both are nothing other than consciousness. So everything that we perceive in consciousness, and it's nothing but consciousness. These are the final statements of the Upanishads. The thought that we are consciousness is not of the same order as other thoughts, which confuse the unreal with the real. So all other thoughts are dualistic, as the verse says, and the thought, you are Brahman, you are the totality. So you are consciousness. You are this non-dual consciousness. Is not of the same nature of all these other thoughts. It's not of the same order as other thoughts. Other thoughts confuse the unreal with the real. When we think I am a husband or I am old, the real part of that statement is contained in the phrase I. And then the closing part of that sentence, is not real, because the I never gets to be a husband, a wife, old or young, black or white. This I, is free of attributes. This confusion between the real and the unreal is unavoidably in every statement, in every knowledge of ours, when this knowledge is dualistic by nature, is objective knowledge. I am the phenomenal object that appears within me. I and the husband, the role I play as a husband. I as someone who is, what was the other, another attribution here? Old as opposed as young, it's another object. It's the condition of the body that appears. So all of these things are attributes to the I, but the I, the true eyes, as we know, is attributeless. Self is free of attribute. And we are here again and again understanding that consciousness is what we really are. This I is consciousness. Consciousness has no attributes, for it's not limited. Again, we have to understand every attribute, every quality, every property in reference to this I, when we think that I am beautiful, I am smart, I am stupid, I am tall. Any thought, any attribute to this I is a limitation to this I. You understand? everything that's going to define us is limiting us because we can only be that defined by the superimposition of attributes and qualities. Whereas I am what? I am the consciousness infusing this body-mind, complex construct, which is defined by its attributes, which is defined and limited by its attribute, but which is fundamentally consciousness in its true nature. Consciousness has no attributes, for it is not limited. It cannot be defined by any thought. So consciousness cannot be defined by any thought because every thought is a thought by the means of qualities, attributes, properties. Every thought that we have in relationship to any object is an attempt to assert certain qualities and attributes and characteristics of that object that we perceive, right? Every thought has an object. Consciousness has no attributes, for its limit is not limited. It cannot be defined by any thought. Every thought has an object, but the thought that the individual and the totality are one, that Jiva-Atma is Paramatma. This thought, being Paramatma, not an object colored by any qualities and attributes. So the Jiva that appears to be a byproduct of configurations that brings about its qualities and properties and functions. And this Jiva, no, it's not a Jiva. This Jiva is the attributeless consciousness. Therefore, the Jiva is Brahman, is a thought that belongs to consciousness as consciousness. The thought that the individual and the totality are one dissolves all objects. So it's not really a thought per se, but that is pure consciousness. It's pure knowledge. And knowledge is a synonym of consciousness. That is pure knowledge. It was revealed by consciousness, and it is what we call pure knowledge, pure consciousness. No? The knowledge, the consciousness, the thought that determines that the Jiva-Atma is not a Jiva, is not defined by its qualities and properties and attributes. The Jiva-Atma is Brahman. Okay? This knowledge is not dualistic by nature, and it's a non-dual thought. It was born by consciousness, and it is consciousness by nature. It is pure knowledge, pure consciousness. The self. When we try to think of consciousness, no object comes to mind. Have you tried that, David? When we try to think, oh no, I'm really tired of thinking about consciousness and never coming to a conclusion here. Okay, now I'm going to visualize it and I'm going to work very hard until I can, produce an image of consciousness in my mind. We need to try. When you have time, not.
I try not to try because I don't feel like I can ever manifest it, that I can't, it's manifested, it's manifested by mithya, but I can't manifest consciousness.
Yeah, no, but we're talking here about putting it to the test so that we understand that the words presented by the Upanishads are really, really accurate, you understand? So when the Upanishad says that consciousness or Brahman is not an object of conceptualization, cannot be conceptualized, cannot be visualized, and then in a moment like this, we say, yeah, maybe we should try. Let's try to, to understand consciousness from the point of view of perception, of conceptualization, We try to think of consciousness, nothing comes to our mind. There is every thought is faithful to an object. Every thought brings about an object in our mind. But when we think the thought of consciousness, that does not bring an object. You understand? And that is very, very intriguing. That's why the Upanishad says that consciousness is not an object of thought. It's not an object of knowledge.
If we could visualize consciousness, then it would become an object. So what's the point?
Yeah, but
I think
we cannot visualize it when we think of consciousness. We cannot see anything with it. Every thought brings about an object. But when we think of consciousness, what it should bring about once we understand what consciousness? Lynn?
I was thinking that it reminds me of somebody who said you can get understanding just by the method of exhaustion. You know, all of a sudden you just, yes, it hits you. You can't do this.
Yeah. So, yeah, we get exhausted until we understand what? That the thought of consciousness will never bring about an object. And then what happens? And then when we remember consciousness, and then instead of having an object coming to our minds to represent that thought, we're going to have the subject, our very nature. You understand? That thought does not point to any object, but points to the subject, the very nature of the jiva, you know? This consciousness, the subject principle, conscious principle by which, you know, object can be illumined, revealed, illumined, and known. So when we think of consciousness, we always should think about the subject, conscious principle, which is our true nature, right? You understand this shift of understanding? We need to, you know, to start perceiving that consciousness is the very nature of the knower. It's not an object. So therefore, the thought consciousness will never produce an object, but it will produce the subject, witnessing conscious, non-experiencing principle. Huh? Because as we know, the mind is another object within consciousness. The mind is a thought. When we think of the mind, immediately we can see my notions, my feelings, my emotions, my determinations, my history, my memories, and mind. Okay, it brings a lot of objects when we hold the thought mind, you know. But when we hold the thought consciousness, and then no longer it can appear as an object, but appear as my very nature, as the subject in which even the mind appears as an object, right? So when we try to think of consciousness, no object comes to mind. Consciousness cannot be objectified, as we know. So this antakarana vritti may be likened to the thought that swallows all thoughts. That's a very nice one. This analogy is the thought, you know, that somehow swallows all other thoughts and makes, you know, the mind quiet, you know, as the subject conscious witnessing non-experience. Non-experience is important because the experience aspect of the mind changes, fluctuates. Non-experiencing subject conscious principle. Huh? It swallows. All other thoughts disappear in that thought, Aham Brahmasmi. You understand, Claudio? You're having a good time, Claudio? Enjoy?
You say now? Or
In general.
yes,
It swallows all thoughts, including the notion that we are individuals acting in a world of objects. So all thoughts, they are just devoured by Aham Brahmasmi. You understand? Not they do not come back again. but they don't come back as reality anymore, you know? They come back like, okay, everything is Brahman and I am Brahman and all thoughts and all objects are just Brahman. It's not that this knowledge will change our sensory perception of objects. The table will remain as a table. And our and Aunt Harriet, that how you say that lady, Zia Maria, and our Zia Maria will still look as she always has, but we will no longer confuse that with that which is real with that which is unreal. Both the table and my aunt will be recognized as the self, pure consciousness, appearing as the table and as my aunt. The verse tells us that one who is established in this knowledge is liberated while living. Now, from what is such a person or being liberated? Liberate from what? Sometimes we have engaged this discussion. So I'm liberated from adhyasa, this confusion between the real and the unreal, from this fundamental ignorance of believing that the objects are real and reality is duality, because I am real. I take myself to be the body, mind, and the objects are real. Plurality is reality, right? Everything is real. So one is liberated from adhyasa, from this confusion between the real and the unreal. This confusion of thinking limitless awareness has attributes, qualities, and limitations. This belief that I, the self, have characteristics, properties, attributes, and limitations is the very cause of suffering. Okay? This adhyasa, this confusion between I, consciousness, my true primary nature, with my apparent nature, my secondary nature as the agent who experience the body-mind complex. So this confusion between consciousness and its upadi is resolved. So the jiva, with this knowledge, it has resolved this fundamental adhyasa, this fundamental confusion. And this confusion is the cause of freedom, is the cause of suffering. Do we have any doubts about that? That this confusion is what caused the human suffering? The confusion between my true nature and my jiva nature, and to take my jiva nature again and again to be reality. And then as I take my jiva nature to be reality, I see everything else as reality as well. And I feel limited because now I am enclosed in the body-mind complex and I cannot enjoy my limitless nature as consciousness. You understand? Now I am the mind, now I'm the body, now I am my experience, my memories. You understand? This is limiting. And moreover, we feel that we are limited by what? By time. Because consciousness lives forever. It's the very nature of consciousness is eternity. And now consciousness appears to be limited even by time. It's limited by all means, but the hardest one to digest is the limitation imposed by time. So this confusion between I, consciousness, and I, the jiva, that is limited by all means, including by time, is what causes all this suffering, all this anxiety, all this attempt to try to live forever. Everybody would like to live forever, right? But then as we grow old, we begin to understand that, wow, it's not possible for the jiva, but it's possible for the I, the true I, the real I, you understand? As consciousness. That's all there is to this very fancy notions about immortality. Immortality for the body is impossible. A lot of people in the spiritual world wants to attain immortality for the body. So this is an impossible task. The body is bound by time. It has a beginning and an end. But in the immortality that all these scriptures talk about is the immortality of our true nature as consciousness. And this freedom from this confusion exists for one who has this knowledge, even as he continues to go about whatever business he may have as an apparent individual in this apparent world. So this moksha, this freedom from this confusion, that somehow it frees the jiva from most of this sense of limitation, and all the complexities of human emotions that come with it, insufficiency and inadequacy, and I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not all the time comparing, and the entire cocktail of negative thoughts and emotions, they come from this confusion, of which is born out of this erroneous identification, misidentification with the body-mind as a jiva. But once this confusion is undone, the one who has this knowledge will continue to go about living its life. That's what it means, liberate, while it's still in the body. So the body is still there. The limitations of the body are still there. The limitations of the mind are still there. But the one who understood and have cleared this confusion, he knows that he is not the body-mind. The body-mind is limited by all means. But this has shifted its sense of identity from the body-mind to consciousness. Therefore, it's go about what forever prabhupada karma until unfolds, as an apparent jiva in an apparent world. That's very nice. So to the eyes of everybody else, he is just another human being. And very few in general are going to understand that there is something very liberating about that individual as he ages and as he dies, because he never dies. What dies is his body, okay? It's an apparent individual, will carry on its prarabdha karma in this apparent world. So this is one of the benefits of self-knowledge once it is properly assimilated, integrate in our lives, internalize, integrate, and fructify, gradually more and more as described in this verse. So next week, we're going to begin from the verse 84, which says, he or she is said to be liberated while living when the self-knowledge is clear, bliss is continuous, and the world is more or less forgotten. How interesting, huh? So Vedanta is not really into producing punya, so that we can be attached to the world, enjoying all these celestial mental states while in the body. No, it says that the self-knowledge, when it's hard and fast, it's clear and firm. This bliss is just a sense of peace, of contentment, and a sense of confidence in my limitless nature as consciousness, you understand? Is a sense of confidence that the body and the mind may suffer any sort of adversity, but consciousness, that which I am, will never be affected by anything from each other. You understand? So this is the bliss, which is not the experiential bliss that a lot of people attribute to this word Ananda. Okay? This Ananda is more like a sense of limitlessness, is the jnana knowledge, the byproduct of jnana, the byproduct of self-knowledge, is a conviction, clear conviction and firm conviction that as consciousness, nothing will ever touch me. And I am consciousness appearing as this agent called the jiva. So this is the bliss. So this bliss is continuous. Okay, this background of confidence, of knowledge, in regards to my true nature, my true identity. And it says that the world is also more or less forgotten. We should never think that it's depressing to forget the world, okay? Because once you have the source of Ananta, which is a direct inner source, no longer depend on the outer world of the objects, gaining what I want and what I like, what I avoid, and pushing, pulling, and running here and there to suck some little Ananta. Once we understand that my nature, my true nature is the only source of Ananta, what do you think that we're gonna do? You think we're gonna be going to the pubs every night again, as we used to do when we were young and very stupid, and ignorant? No, we don't go around chasing things and people and experience and, no, okay, this weekend, where I'm gonna go? Oh, I'm going to go to a mountain because I'm going to jump from a mountain. With somebody comes with one of these things, and they say that is wonderful because you drop, and then something up. Any one of these exciting experience, you think that once you were there enjoying the nectar of your inner satisfaction as consciousness, once you know that I don't need to experience anything to enjoy my fullness and completion and satisfaction and wholeness. So the jnana is going to say, okay, let the world be there, let the jivas, the samsaras, go about chasing objects in the world. But, I just remain here, living my simple life, doing what's required, fulfilling my roles in society, but I'm no longer chasing objects. Why? It's not because the jnana is depressed, it's because he's already enjoying himself greatly. You understand? So that's all there is to it. But we're going to go more into it next week, because this is a very nice verse. So do we have anything to say?
We just, Thursday is a Thanksgiving holiday for Americans. And I'm wondering if, there's a consensus around whether we're having a.
Let's do on Wednesday.
We're all,
Thursday.
Shall we do it? You want to do it on Wednesday, or you want to cancel it this week? We could do on Wednesday or Friday if you wish. Maybe Wednesday.
I can do that.
Huh? Because Friday is leftover of Thanksgiving.
I can do
Wednesday's
anything.
good. Wednesday's good.
Wednesday is good?
Yes,
Okay.
Wednesday.
Okay. David, so Wednesday 1, okay?
Wednesday, and Thursday works for me too, but I mean, Wednesday's fine. I just wanted to have that conversation so that those of us who celebrate it.
I mean, for me, it doesn't matter. In Europe, Thanksgiving is non-existent. But for you guys, it means a lot. It's a social and family and cultural thing. So for me, either way.
We're all supposed to stay home.
No?
We're all supposed to stay home. We are all
Okay.
supposed to stay home because COVID is rampant.
Okay. Shall we do it Wednesday or Thursday, please? Let's decide it.
Wednesday's good for me. Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday it is, yeah?
Okay. Mark? Okay.
Yeah, I think Wednesday's okay for me. I've got a commitment in the morning, but I'm not sure if I'll have finished, but hopefully I'll have finished by the afternoon.
Okay. And Ruth, you
So,
prefer Wednesday as well, right?
Wednesday's fine.
It's fine, it's better, or it doesn't matter?
Yes. No, Wednesday's good.
Okay. It's good. Everything is good. Okay. And then we meet again on Wednesday, okay? At 4 o'clock now. In the 8 o'clock Carbondale time. Our usual time. Okay, let's not get confused here, Sylvia. The usual time, Thursday time on Wednesday. Oh,
Okay, I just looked at my calendar and I'll have to, I have to leave by 8, after about 55 minutes.
okay, not a problem. We begin sharply on time. Oh,
Good class.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, everyone. See you this coming Wednesday. Namaste, much love, hugs.
Ciao.
thanks, Arlindo. Great satsang.
Ciao, ciao.